Hi, this is Richard Campbell from .NET Rocks, and I'm here in Orlando. It's June of 2012, and I'm at TechEd, and I found Doug Seven.
Hi, Richard.
Hey, Doug. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I mean, the show's just getting started, and there's, of course, the huge gambit of Microsoft topics out there. What ones interest you?
The thing that's really on my mind lately is kind of what you said, this gambit of technology, right? You have the cloud, and you have devices, and you have different client platforms. There's just a ton of stuff, and this is no different than previous TechEds, right? There's always been a ton of stuff, but it just kind of keeps building and keeps building and keeps building. And for me, the most interesting things are always the newest and most, like I kind of, I'm an opportunist. I go where the excitement is, and things like cloud and mobile devices, they're certainly not new this year, but they're the newer platforms, the newer technologies that we're dealing with, as opposed to client-server stuff we've been dealing with for years and years.
Well, the mobile landscape seems to have hit this transformative stage. I mean, we're now talking about a significant portion of the internet going to and from mobile devices.
Huge, huge. This year, 2012, will be probably the first year that mobile devices outsell desktops and laptops in the U.S.
And I still consider them all personal computers. I mean, what's more personal than a computer in your pocket?
Well, that's the way I think about it. Like, if I think of my phone, my smartphone, as my primary computing device. It's not the device I use for productivity. It's not the thing I use to do my work all day long. But it is the only device that is with me from the time I get up in the morning to the time I go to bed at night. It's the first device I touch. It's the last device I touch, and I have it with me everywhere I go.
And you can see with some of the newer technologies coming down the pipe, more and more of our lives will function out of that phone.
Oh, absolutely. And tablets as well. As you start seeing, the iPad has been hugely popular, and now Android is coming out with a variety of tablets, and Microsoft will be coming out with their Windows 8 on ARM form factor pretty soon. And so as a secondary device, maybe even a third device, right? If you think of your phone and your PC as your kind of two primary devices, and the tablet being that sort of intermediate device. For me, an iPad is a great living room device.
Right.
I use it when I'm kind of kicking around. I don't want to sit at my desk watching TV and doing whatever I'm doing. It's a very handy device for that.
And good for writing a couple of sentences, maybe not a page. But I'm mostly a consumption device.
Yeah,
a little more screen real estate.
And I can take it with me easily. I can take it if I'm going on a trip or on the airplane or on vacation or wherever I'm going to the coffee shop. It's an easy device to use, easy form factor to work with, and it gives me a lot of flexibility.
And I do think for developers right now, this is a tougher time because we've really got a diverse state. There's so many different ways to build applications, and there's so many different platforms to build applications for.
Yeah, it's interesting if you think back. In the 90s we had the browser wars, right?
Yeah.
And it was huge. Everybody's all this consternation about the different platforms, the different the browsers, the way they render different things, and you could never build something for one browser and have it work on other browsers, and it was hugely problematic. You have the same thing, except now it's coupled with the actual operating system.
Right.
No longer is it just, I build it on my machine and I struggle with these different browsers, but now I build it on my machine that works for this platform, and then I have to get another machine for a different platform, and another SDK, and another set of developer tools, and build the same thing over again for this other platform, and then I have to do that a third time for the next platform.
Well, I feel like we've almost got back in the good old days, which are not that long ago. I mean, if you built for Windows, that was 90% of your users done.
Yeah,
it's just not that way anymore.
It's not, but it's close if you think about it. Like if you're targeting the mobile world, and mostly phones, because tablets are still, while they're coming up, they're still a small section of the mobile market. But if you're targeting phones, you want to hit that 80% mark, you still have two platforms you have to deal with, Android and iOS. Those are the dominant platforms, and the two of them make up about 80% of the market. Now, Windows is likely to come in pretty strong with their Windows 8 release and get some good penetration here. But either way, I'm still dealing with two platforms, and now how do I build once, or even build and be able to reuse what I've done and target these platforms?
Now you're talking about the scary old interoperability story.
Yeah, and again, multiple SDKs, multiple tool sets, multiple skill sets. I have to learn different programming languages for every platform.
Well, when you talk about Android and iOS, like the development models are totally different for each other. It's remarkable for what is basically identical hardware, how differently they're approaching building software.
It's interesting because they're very different. They use different technologies, different languages for writing the apps, but ultimately you're doing the same thing. Right? I'm working on a screen about yay big, and maybe there's a slight variation in that screen size, but it's about the same. And the user experience I'm trying to enable is pretty similar. The device capabilities I want to access are similar across devices: GPS, accelerometer, compass, whatever. So from a customer's perspective, the person using the app that I'm building, there's really no difference.
Right.
And my customers are on both platforms. They don't go, oh, well, you've only built for Android, so I'm going to be an Android user.
Right.
It's kind of the other way around. Well, I'm an Android user, and you didn't build for Android, so sorry, I'm not going to use your app.
I'm going to go somewhere else.
So as a developer, I want to get as broad as I can, right? And the first step is Android and iOS. That gets me 80% of the way. And then BlackBerry and Windows and whoever else will carry me the rest of the way. And as Nokia comes in with their Windows Phone offerings, and Windows 8 comes out on ARM, that could totally change the dynamic. But as a developer, I have a very difficult problem to overcome, which is how do I build and be productive and be efficient and not rebuild the same app over and over and over again for different platforms and reach this broad market where my customers don't choose their platform based on my app.
Your app isn't driving them.
Right.
Their device is driving you.
And their choice of device could be led by a huge number of factors, all the way down to I'm on this carrier, and they don't have that phone.
They don't have that phone.
So
they have this phone.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm on Sprint, so I can't get an iPhone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
iPhone,
and the diversity of Android is a strength for the carriers that everybody's got a unique product, but very challenging for developers.
Yeah, hugely challenging for developers, and there's a variety of technologies that are coming out that are making this easier. If you think about, like you mentioned, the platforms are from a technology standpoint very different, but from a user experience standpoint very much the same. But one of the things they both share in common is this concept of a web view, right? Which is, for all intents, it's a windowless browser, right? Full screen browser that just can run on the app. You can launch and run it. And then within that container, you can use things like HTML and JavaScript to build and render your app. And it doesn't have to be connected to a web server. It can run on the device. It's just a rendering engine for that technology. From a Windows 8 standpoint, this is very much like the Windows web app, using JavaScript and WinJS and these technologies.
The Chakra engine, that way of building. It's building native apps for Windows 8, but using the language and tools that you're already familiar with.
Exactly, and the term hybrid app has come up a lot, right? It's this concept of an app that is built inside a shell that runs natively on the device. It can be deployed to the device. It can be distributed through app stores and through marketplaces, and it runs on the device, but it uses web technology. It doesn't have to use a web server.
No.
It just uses web technology for the presentation and the logic and whatever is happening on the device. It can also work with the web server just the same way any other app, even if it was written in Objective-C. It can still work with the web server to get data, do whatever you need with it. But this has really opened up the doors for a lot of people. Because now if I'm a developer, particularly if I'm a web developer, or maybe I've done mobile web, and the struggle with mobile web is I'm designing for the device, but I don't get the device.
Right.
I don't get the sensors. Maybe I get geolocation because I can kind of do that off
You can simulate that.
IPs and things like that. But I really don't get the full ability of the device. And the idea
if you're developing on a desktop machine, you have the sort of interface abilities of the desktop machine, but you're trying to actually build an app for a device that has all of these additional sensors.
You're building a website that renders for a mobile device, and it's like cutting off both your arms, right? Here, run on this device, but you can't use anything the device is capable of doing.
Right.
All the great capabilities the device offers, from location and accelerometer and compass and whatever you want, you can't access it through mobile web. So the idea of using web technologies but running natively on the device and using this sort of web to native bridge that gives you access to these sensors is a huge step forward for people where they already have the skill set to build the apps.
Right.
And now they can get access to the things they want to get. So effectively what you're doing is you're opening the doors to people, right? You're saying, you know how to build a website, you know how to use HTML and JavaScript, you know how to render something, you know how to do the logic, why not do it on the device instead of on a web server?
Right.
And here's the interface layer, this web to native technology that's going to give you the bridge to do that. Things like Apache Cordova, it used to be called PhoneGap before Adobe bought. It's an open source library that just gives you that ability. It's a JavaScript API that connects to a native bridge effectively that gives you access to all these sensors. In a lot of ways, much like WinJS does for Windows 8.
Sure, and for exactly the same reason. I mean, and what I like about that approach is you already know a lot of it.
Yeah. Right?
You know your way around JavaScript. You know your way around HTML. You've got to learn to work within the form factor. You've got to learn to work through these new SDKs.
Yeah.
But how symmetrical is that across these different devices?
That's the beauty of these web to native bridges. I can't remember these 13 or 15 different APIs that you have to learn. It's kind of about it.
Yeah.
And because they're JavaScript, they work the same on any device.
Right.
The difference is you have to put a different wrapper for every device. So, the web to native bridge hasn't solved all the problems, because if I want to build an app using this technology and I want to target Android and iPhone, I still have to get this SDK in my Xcode development environment for iOS, and I have to get it in Eclipse for my Android app, and in Visual Studio if I want to target Windows Phone. And so it's still not easy, but I can at least use the programming languages I know and the technologies I know. The next kind of evolution of this is to abstract some of that away. Give me the development environment. Let me work on the code. Let me work on my idea.
Right.
Don't let me work on managing an SDK or managing a development environment or managing multiple development environments. Let me work on my idea. Let me focus on taking my idea and turning it into an app that someone can use.
Right. Don't constrain me by tools when I'm just exploring the idea of how I use this thing, this style of device, irrespective of which one it is or all of them, to build my app.
Yeah,
paint the picture first.
Exactly. Exactly. If I'm going to paint a picture, I want to focus on my painting. I don't want to focus on managing different color palettes and how threading weaves into my brush and whatever it is I have to do. I want to just get those things and have them work. And I want to not be distracted from my idea. Anything that distracts me from my idea means I'm going to lose some of that fidelity. I'm going to lose some of my idea. And this is I'm sure this has happened to you. I'm not going to impose that it did, but it happens to me a lot, which is I get this great idea, I've got some momentum, and I'm going, and then something happens. I have to manage some part of my configuration, change something's not working, spend an hour working with the configuration. What was I working on again? I had this great idea. What was it? I can't remember.
Yeah, Milton's Paradise Lost, right? Yeah. The thread gets dropped because you got mired in the tools.
And so, why? I mean, we've been doing this a long time, right? Software development's not new anymore. Why is it so rudimentary?
Yeah.
Why can't it be easier? Why can't I have a development tool that lets me focus on my idea and not on my tool?
What are your thoughts on the native versus web approach to apps on the phone? People's sort of expectation of the way their app on their phone's supposed to look. Like any app you're building, it's what's right for the experience. Right? That's step number one. Is what experience am I trying to create, and what is the technology that helps me get there? Mobile web is a great set of technology for a lot of things, but it requires connectivity, limits you on what you can do on the device. So there's inherent limitations already. And if your app doesn't require those things, that's fine. If your app is going to be in a place where your devices are always going to be connected to the internet, and that you don't need any of those on-device capabilities, it's a great solution because you can build it in one place, manage it in one place, and off you go. But when you need to access device capabilities, or you need to think about running in a disconnected environment, or where if a connection drops, the app still works. The tolerance of unreliable connectivity is like the bane of mobile existence.
Right? Native now, or in some cases even just responsiveness. Right? I want to start my app up and see my thing immediately. I don't want to wait for it to get a connection to the internet and pull some content down and do whatever it does. And so you just have to think about like all things in app, think about the customer experience. What experience do you want to build? And then pick the technology that does that for you. The advantage to using these sort of web to native bridge technologies is I can get there easier. I can build a native app. It is a native app. It lives on the device, it resides on the device, it runs on the device. It's just not built with the platform SDK prescribed language. I don't have to use Objective-C to make a form that somebody enters an email address and hits a submit button. Why do I need Objective-C for that? I might need Objective-C if I want to write a game, or something that does a lot of rendering or something.
Yeah, if you're counting frame buffers, you want to be pretty close to
exactly. High polygon count kind of stuff, things like that. But a lot of stuff you don't need that. Line of business apps is that as the enterprise world goes more mobile, line of business apps, you don't need that kind of stuff. You need forms. You need charts. You need renderings. You need things like that. Things that are easily done with HTML. And so this kind of technology lends itself very well to that. It makes it easy to manage. It works across device platforms. I can build it, with some variation for, styling rules, kind of like we did with the browser workspace, right? I make CSS for different platforms. I can build my app one time and run it across multiple devices. The idea that I can build one app, 5 different style sheets, and all of a sudden I'm on 20 different device platforms. And now my enterprise mobile base is up and running with this line of business app that does everything they want it to do.
Well, this is that part of the promise of HTML5 CSS3 was a much smarter CSS for dealing with the variations in devices.
Yeah.
They can actually understand how wide the window is and what the DPI is, and pick a different image or pick a different control based on the screen space they've got to work with.
Exactly. I can build an app, and I can easily detect if it's running on an iPhone, an iPad, an Android phone, an Android tablet, whatever it's on, and I can provide the styling that's appropriate for that device, and I can make an app that I can put on 8 or 10 different devices and it'll look identical. It'll work identical. It'll do its thing. And I've only really built the presentation layer and the JavaScript functionality, the logic layer, a single time, and all I've done is provide different styling rules for different platforms. As a web developer background, this is normal to me. This is just the way I operate. This is I'm not surprised by this at all.
Right.
But we've gotten so comfortable with, or so we've been forced to get used to the fact that different platforms require different SDKs, require different ways of doing things. It's just not the way it is. It shouldn't be anyway.
Doesn't have to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you talking to us.
Thanks, Richard. Have a good TechEd.
Do that.